Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 1. Now let's start the fanfic. Sleep. It was one of the many basic everyday requirements for humans in their lives. In order to replenish energy for the body and have the mind be well rested, the average human gets as much as 8 hours of sleep per 24-hour cycle. Some could manage to go without a need for sleep in times of need, while others just could not do without it. Nevertheless, no one could deny that sleep was so vital of a prerequisite that most took it for granted. Yet for the owner of a pair of sky blue eyes, he woke after only a few hours of rest. He blinked up at the ceiling of his dark apartment with only the moonlight shining through the windows, thus everything he saw was bathed in the soft glow of the Earth's moon. However, the warm body, which was resting on him, made him gaze down to the female head that was using his chest as a pillow. A loving smile spread across his face upon seeing the tousled shoulder blade length brown hair and the restful expression that showed happiness and satisfaction. She looked so beautiful with the moonlight glow reflecting somewhat off her hair that he couldn't help but think she looked like an angel. For Uzumaki Naruto, 18-year-old Junin shinobi of Konohagakure no Sato, he couldn't help but to lean his head down to plant a warm kiss on the top of the woman's head. She stirred a bit but did not wake up, and with a small purr, she resumed her slumber. Her actions made Naruto broadened his smile and his heart beat in love for the woman he gently hugged with his arms. 19-year-old Junin Kunoichi Tenten. As he watched the beautiful female ninja sleep, her body warmth and smooth skin feeling wonderful on top of his own, Naruto remembered the day when it all began for the two of them. It has been exactly 1 year ago that a simple shopping trip has started the unforeseen process, which gradually transformed the nature of their relationship, from friendship to one of deep love. He thanked Kami for this wonderful change in his life, for it brought Tenten into his heart, and being honest to himself, the blonde man could not have imagined then that out of all the women he knew, this brunette would eventually be the one to bring so much joy into his life. Backward time skip. 1 year previous. Walking down the street under nice sunny skies, Naruto grinned as he took in a breath of fresh air. At 17 years old, he knew his life was good, far better than it was when he first started out as a genin at 12 years old. He has been a chunin for more than a year now. Missions for him and Team 7 has been great, especially since the defeat of the Akatsuki and the Sound Village. Most people in Konoha has recognized him as a worthy shinobi, and to top it off, he had brought his best friend back to the village, as he promised. The grin on his face faltered upon thinking about his best friend rival. It had not been easy to get Sasuke to listen and be reasonable regarding his revenge against Konoha. With Itachi and Madara dead, Sasuke was the last of the Uchiha clan, and after an intense battle where Naruto won but refused to take the raven-haired boy's life, Sasuke realized that Naruto was right. What good would he achieve by killing every man, woman, and child in Konoha? Would it help revive the clan? Would it help knowing he would be just as bad as Madara himself? In the end, Naruto's uncanny ability to make people change has once more done its job, and the last Uchiha decided to stop the bloodshed and end the circle of revenge permanently. Of course, given the state of the village and the news that the Uchiha clan had planned to overthrow the Hokage in a coup d'état, most of the villagers were very reluctant to have the last Uchiha back among them. Yet to satisfy the villagers that no special treatment would be given, Tsunade offered that Sasuke be banned from any shinobi duties or services for 5 years or so, and be supervised by a Junin for 2 years under house arrest until he proven he posed no threat to Konoha. The arrangement was perfectly fine with Sasuke, given he decided he wanted to focus on reviving his clan than anything to do with power, and given his clan's large assets, the last Uchiha was freed to focus on his last goal in life. He had enough of the bad history and strife his clan had caused, so he made a promise, not only to himself but also to Naruto, to head the new Uchiha clan in a good direction than the arrogant way of thinking it had before. Naruto chuckled at the memories. Of course, the promise didn't stop Sasuke from still being somewhat a stick in a mud, but the blonde knew it was just an act, for underneath the exterior was a young man he was proud to be called his best friend. Yet best friend or no, Naruto was somewhat surprised that Sakura has wormed his way into Sasuke's heart. Seeing the pinkett has grown tremendously, from the silly fangirl she had been at 12, has made the former Avenger look at his former Kunoichi teammate in a whole new light. So it came to no shock to the blonde shinobi that Haruno Sakura has slowly fallen for the Uchiha, but this time it was for real and not a silly crush. Sighing, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki had known somewhat that there was a chance Sakura would go to Sasuke. He thought he had a chance with the beautiful pink-haired girl, but it seems it was unavoidable. So with a heavy heart, he had dropped Sakura from that part of his heart and kept her as one of his closest friends. A devilish grin appeared on Naruto's face. Now Sasuke has two quick-temper kunoichi for girlfriends and future wives. Man, I never thought the Tem would be so bold to have a harem. It was known to everyone that Sakura was not Sasuke's first girlfriend, fiancé. Upon returning to Konoha, the Uchiha has brought an ex-sound kunoichi, who went by the name of Karen, and the redhead girl was also a medic as Sakura was. Not only did Karen help advanced Konoha's medical knowledge but also provided a rare bloodline ability not seen before. It was hard for anyone to say no to a person with such abilities. Of course, it soon came apparent that the redhead was quick-tempered much like Sakura and Tsunade, thus when Karen and Sakura butt heads, it was a good sign for everyone to clear the area. With a snicker regarding his best friend's future marriage, Naruto entered a weapons store. It was the only weapons store, which didn't turn him away with hostility when he had first started at the Konoha Ninja Academy. As a student, he had been required to get his own set of shuriken and kunai, and this store, which was the final one he had checked, had turned out to have a wonderful owner, who had treated him well and didn't see him as demon, as most of the villagers saw him back then. Since then, he had always come to this store to stock up on his shinobi weapons. The ringing of the simple bell above the door alerted the person behind the counter, and upon seeing the whisker-faced blonde, her lips formed into a large smile. "Hello, Naruto. I haven't seen you in quite a while." Naruto returned the smile with a smile of his own. "Yeah, it has been some time since I've last seen you, Tenten." The bun-haired kunoichi nodded in agreement, her radiant expression making him feel welcomed. "So, what can I do for you?" Tenten began casually before her lips quirked upward on one side teasingly. "Come to make a large order of kunai and shuriken." The teenage boy softly laughed, as he approached the counter. "Not as many as you use, Tenten. I definitely know I do not have the money to purchase such a large arsenal as you have stored in your scroll." The brown-haired young woman giggled at that. "True, I certainly have yet to meet another shinobi with the same number of weapons on their person as I have. To do that, one has to have more money than the fire daimyo in order to constantly replenish the weapons lost in battle. Pays to be a daughter of a weapons smith and shop owner, Naruto quickly ribbed good-naturedly. "You bet." Tenten winked slyly, before both laughed together at the joke. It was a laughter anyone could tell was shared between good friends. After her mirth died off, the weapons mistress of Konoha eyed the blonde Chunin for a moment before speaking. "So, what do you really want, Naruto?" With a small grin, the young man spoke the reason why he came to the shop. "Simply put, I'm looking for a chakra sword." Tenten blinked in stupefaction. "Say what?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. "A chakra sword?" Naruto repeated, clearly confused why she asked. "I know that," Tenten replied, raising a hand to forestall her friend. "Just why a chakra sword, Naruto? Kenjutsu is not your forte." Ever since she had known Naruto, it was clear his shinobi expertise was in ninjutsu with some minor taijutsu. Only in the past 2 years he had started learning fuinjutsu, the art of seals, especially after Jiraiya's death, so this request for a sword was quite baffling. Seeing the confusion on her face, Naruto started explaining. "Well, I know I'm not skilled in kenjutsu, but I've been trying to find new ninjutsus, and it had me thinking that maybe I should use something much like Tamari uses her battle fan. Understanding now dawned to Tenten. You're talking about using a medium to channel and focus your nature chakra in order to create wind techniques without the need of using hand signs. Exactly. A smiling Naruto pointed to Tenten, like she has won the grand prize. She has to admit that Naruto's idea was sound. After all, if a ninja could conjure up jutsus without the use of hand signs, he or she wouldn't have to worry about anyone copying the techniques, much like the Uchiha clan or Hitaki Kakashi had done. Yet Tenten also knew it takes time with long hours of training to even master using a medium, thus why most shinobi opted for the easy way by using hand signs. There was no doubt that Sabaku no Tamari must had trained for years prior to her appearance in the Chunin exams 5 years ago, for such training certainly explained why the Suna Kunoichi was able to use a large battle fan as a medium to create wind techniques. Thinking about the blonde Suna Junin had conjured up an image, which made Tenten giggled with a hand over her mouth while looking at her fellow Konoha shinobi. Naruto, with a confusing grin, asked, "What's so funny?" "Well," the bun-haired girl drawled out with a teasing smirk, "if you want to emulate Tamari, you can buy a similar battle fan and dress up in black with a sash around your waist." Seeing that surprised look on his face made Tenten laugh out loud. No, no, no. Naruto nervously chuckled. Now he knew his friend was playing him. "I certainly will not carry around a large battle fan or dress up like Tamari. I like to be original, thank you very much." He mentally shook off the weird image of him dressed like Tamari, although he did admit to himself that Tamari's fan looked cool. Just as Maida Guy's female student was about to speak after her laughter died off, another feminine voice spoke out with a witty voice. "That's no way to treat a customer, Tenten. Shame on you." Both young ninjas quickly turned their heads to the door leading to the back of the store and the stairs to the living quarters on the next floor above, and there stood a woman with brown hair in a ponytail and green eyes. She appeared to be in her mid-40s and her simple outfit was what most housewives in Konoha wore these days. Her radiant smile and the hair clearly would make any stranger knew immediately that she was Tenten's mother. "Kyohaku-kasen," Naruto called out with a grin to the woman, who walked over to stand beside her daughter behind the counter. Chuckling, the young man rubbed the back of his head. "You know we were just joking around." "I know," Kyohaku replied, still grinning. "I was just driving home the point to my daughter." Naruto laughed loudly, while Tenten took the joke in stride with a narrow-eyed grin at her mother. Calming down a minute later, the teenage boy grinned at Tenten's mother with affection, knowing she was one of his most precious people. She had never looked down at him, ever since he had first walked into her store those many years ago, and even after he had found out the Kyuubi was sealed inside of him, Kyohaku still had treated him like a person despite the loss of her husband during the Kyuubi attack. She ranked up there alongside the Ichirakus and the third as the very first family he ever had growing up in the village. "So," the female blacksmith began, getting right down to business, "did I hear you're looking for a chakra sword to use as a medium for your elemental chakra to create wind jutsus?" "That's right," Naruto confirmed with a single nod. "Do you have any?" Tenten frowned. "That's the problem, Naruto. I don't think we have any chakra swords. Chakra weapons are specially made and crafted compared to regular weapons, and it takes a lot of time to forge them. This is why they are quite expensive to anyone to buy." Her hand gestured to her mother. "Mom has some skills in making them, but it was my dad who was the real master craftsman in chakra weapons." Naruto frowned in disappointment. He was hoping Kyohaku would have some chakra swords in stock. He certainly did not want to do business with any of the other weapons shops in Konoha. Even if they might view him now differently, thanks to him being a hero during the wars against the Akatsuki and Oto, he rather spent his money in Kyohaku, whom he trusted as a friend as well as a weapons maker. A raised finger prompted both young adults to focus on the older woman, who grinned knowingly. "I know I have something that might just suit you, Naruto-kun." With that said, she strolled into the back storage area, leaving behind a hopeful Naruto and a baffled Tenten, wondering what her mother knew that she did not. As they waited, the Kyuubi Jinchuriki grinned softly at his female friend. "So, how's everything going?" "I'm fine," Tenten grinned back reassuringly, and seeing the sympathy in those expressive blue eyes, she immediately elaborated further. "I mean it, Naruto, I'm fine. I appreciated everyone's support and kindness, but the breakup was 2 months ago. Neji and I have come to an understanding regarding the situation, and we've moved on since then." "I certainly did, given I know it's not productive to keep moping over something that I have no control over." A nod from Naruto told her he understood. "Well, given the reason why you broke up and what is today, I thought you still would be somewhat down." Sighing with a warm grin, Tenten was reminded again how much Naruto cared deeply for all his friends and comrades that he considered like a large extended family to him. She happened to be one of them, and it warms her being to know the blonde would always be there to provide emotional support to anyone within his family who needed it. Reaching out, she clasped his hand that was resting on the counter. "As I said, I'm fine," the brunette repeated. "As you know, it came as a shock to Neji and I, when his clan arranged for him to marry one of his distant cousins. Least it's someone he knew and certainly not Hinata or Hanabi, whom he would not have been comfortable to marry. As for today, it's no big deal for me," Tenten shrugged slightly. "After the breakup, I'm not looking to suddenly find a boyfriend." One side of her lips curled up slightly. "After all, I'm still young. It's not like I'm an old maid." Both young adults chuckled at that. Letting go of his hand, Tenten grinned teasingly at her fellow Chunin. "So what about you?" Knowing what she was referring, Naruto shook his head with a tiny sad grin. "No one, and you already know why." Dropping the teasing expression, Tenten nodded with a slight sympathetic grin. Yeah, everyone knew how much he loved Sakura, so it was easy to tell Naruto's heart was crushed when the pink-haired Kunoichi became Sasuke's second girlfriend, fiancé. It was just too bad, in Tenten's opinion, that Hinata had started dating Kiba a few months before Sakura and Sasuke became an item. If Hinata had waited just a little longer, the Hyuga heir would have gotten her chance with Naruto. So the two young shinobi stood there quietly, until the silence was broken upon the return of Kyohaku, who was holding a wrapped clothed bundle. "Here we are," she grinned as the older brunette placed the bundle onto the counter before untying the strings. The two young shinobi noticed the cloth appeared to be dusty, indicating it had been in storage for many years, and once the cloth parted, Tenten slightly gasped while Naruto raised his eyebrows at the contents. There laid two elegant kodachis in their equally stylish sheaths, scabbards. The hilts were wrapped with intertwined white and gold leather strips to provide easy grip, while the butts and guards were exposed silver steel. The sheaths were black and embroiled with gold and white Japanese designs, particularly two striking dragons, whose bodies wrapped around the sheaths with the tails starting at the tip and heads ending near the mouths. Overall, the two short swords appeared to be made for display purposes and not for combat use. Taking one in hand, Naruto unsheathed the sword and held it up as he and Tenten admired the gleaming steel. "It looks like they have not been used," the blonde commented, while his female friend nodded in agreement to his observations. "No, they haven't," a grinning Kyohaku confirmed. "These chakra kodachis were crafted by my husband under a special order by a famous Konoha ninja." Her grin and eyes became a bit depressed. Sadly, they were finished the day before the Kyuubi attacked the village, thus their owner, who paid in advance for the swords, died fighting the fox along with my husband. These swords have been sitting in storage ever since then. "And who was the customer Dad made these swords for?" asked a curious Tenten, whose eyes didn't stop admiring the steel blade of the kodachi in Naruto's hand. A proud expression appeared on Tenten's mother. "The Yondaime Hokage." "Say what?" both young ninjas shouted as they trained wide eyes on the older woman. The fourth," Tenten sputtered in awe before eyeing the sheathed kodachi on the counter. "Dad made these for the fourth." Kyohaku bobbed her head once at her daughter. "Yes, he did. The Yondaime owned several swords, but none of them were chakra blades. He'd thought of experimenting with a pair of chakra konochis to see what kind of jutsus he could come up using his elemental chakra. Your father was proud to do the job, for he was also responsible for making a special order of kunai for the fourth. What those kunai are for, I will not say, but I can say they helped win the war against Iwa. His mind reeling, Naruto sheathed the kodachi he held and placed it back next to its twin. I can't accept this, he stammered, his eyes never leaving the two short swords. I can't buy this. A reassuring grin came to Kyohaku's face. There is no need of payment, Naruto, she said, causing her daughter and the blonde man to once again look at her in astonishment. The fourth already had paid for them, and I cannot think of a better person more suited to wield these blades than you. Are you serious, Kyohaku-kasen? Naruto questioned, not truly believing what he was hearing. Even Tenten couldn't believe it, for who would even give away anything that belonged to the fourth Hokage? After all, such items would be treasured artifacts. The warm grinning, 40-something woman nodded. I'm sure, Naruto, everyone knows now that the fourth had sacrificed his life to seal the Kyuubi in you. Both young adults became somber on that. He had wanted you to be viewed as a hero, but you know that didn't come to pass. Think of this as his way to help you protect yourself as well as everyone you love and care deeply. Knowing the fourth, I have a good hunch he would not mind you having the blades to continue protecting the village and uphold the will of fire. His cerulean eyes locked with emerald ones, the young Hokage wannabe saw the hidden message Tenten's mother was conveying in her words and in her eyes. I do not think your father would mind. The swords are your heritage. Take them. Warmth of love and family slowly bubbled into his heart. Naruto knew Kyohaku was one of a few who knew the Yondaime was his father. It bolstered his being that she would give him something of his father's to help him protect his precious people and achieve his goal in following his father's footsteps, to be Hokage. With a determined grin slowly appearing onto his face, Naruto nodded gratefully at the wise older woman. Thanks, Kyohaku-kasen. She simply nodded with a pleased grin and began wrapping the kodachis in the protective cloth. No other words were needed to say. Not fully understanding what went on between her mother and her friend, Tenten let it go and focused on the fact that Naruto was now in possession of the fourth's custom-made chakra blades. You better take care of those, Naruto, she slightly teased. It would be a shame if you neglected the kodachis that anyone in the village would highly prize. I will. Naruto grinned back fiercely. I swear it on my word. Datbeo. Both women smiled at that. There was no doubt now that Naruto would take care of the two short swords with all his being. After all, it was known by all that when he gave his word, he would always keep it. It was part of his ninja way. Well now, Kyohaku nearly sing-sung as she finished tying the swords up, that's that. As she pushed the bundled kodachis toward their new owner, the female blacksmith raised an eyebrow. So tell me, Naruto. From what I overheard you telling Ten-chan, you have no kenjutsu training at all. How are you going to handle them? Blinking in stupefaction at first, the whisker-faced young man then shrugged. Just wield them around, I guess. Letting out a breath of disbelief, both women's sweat dropped and closed their eyes. It seems Naruto really did not understand. It was Tenten who opened her eyes and started explaining. My mom has a point, Naruto, the bun-haired girl began. I know you wanted to use the swords to create new wind jutsus, but what happens if an enemy manages to get in close to use a sword or a weapon while you have both hands occupied with the kodachis? If you know a form or two of kenjutsu on how to use the kodachi, you could able to defend yourself against such attacks, long enough for you to put some distance to use wind jutsus or free your hands to use any of your ninjutsu. Kyohaku nodded at her daughter's explanations. You do not wield the blades as they were mere weapons, Naruto-kun. They become an extension of your body, and any shinobi, who becomes one with his or her weapons, is not to be taken lightly. Take Asuma-sensei, Tenten added, mentioning the late Junin who died 2 years ago against the immortal Akatsuki Hidan, he wielded a pair of chakra knuckle blades. He didn't thrash them around wildly with his elemental chakra extending the blades. He knew how to use them, and he became quite an expert on wielding those blades. Naruto nodded in understanding. I see. That makes sense. He frowned as a thought occurred to him. But I do not know anyone to teach me Kenjutsu. Tenten's lips curled into a knowing smirk. I can teach you. You can. The blonde raised his eyebrows in surprise. Duh, Naruto, the brunette rolled her eyes, still smirking. With all the weapons I carry in my scroll, I do have a few swords, so I have to know some forms of Kenjutsu in order to use them properly. A bashful Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Good point, he chuckled. Ignoring the chuckle from her mother and the unintentional pun Naruto produced, the young weapons mistress sighed before continuing. You do not need to become a master in order to properly wield the kodashis. I'm no master myself on any forms of Kenjutsu. I do know a couple of forms to be used with the kodashi, and knowing the forms might help you create wind jutsus. I doubtful Tamari had created her wind jutsus by just wielding her fan carelessly. Naruto brightly grinned. Thanks, Tenten. That's what friends are for, Tenten mentioned with a friendly grin. To be there to help and support one another. I don't mind at all helping you, for you are my friend. The bright grin on his face became a friendly one. Right. Friends stick together. Tenten nodded in return, pleased that she would be able to help Naruto with his training. So, Naruto said while picking up the wrapped swords, where and when do you want to start the training? We have to agree first that training with our prospective teams and missions for the village come first. I don't think our teammates and Tsunade-sama would appreciate us skipping out on them just for me to teach you Kenjutsu. Naruto nodded, showing his agreement and understanding, before Tenten carried on. Good. Other than that, I might be required to help mom mind the store, so there will be days the training will be early in the morning, late in the afternoon, or none at all. Kyohaku mock scoffed at her daughter. Never mind me, Ten-chan. If both of you are freed to do the Kenjutsu training, you tell me and I'll be okay to mind the store for the day. Tenten smiled gratefully at her mother. Thanks, Mom. She turned back to her would-be student. I'm freed tomorrow. You? Yep. Naruto grinned. Good. Tenten chirped. Meet me at the Memorial Stone training field at 8 tomorrow morning. I'll start on teaching you the stances for a Kenjutsu form I know, and in the afternoon, you can start trying molding elemental chakra into the swords to begin getting used to using the kodachis as a medium. From what I know, it takes a lot of practice for anyone to use their elemental chakra to form jutsus through a medium. The blonde man smiled his trademark foxy smile. No sweat, Tenten. I'll learn that Kenjutsu form, and I'll soon be pumping out wind attacks out of these two swords in no time flat. Datbeo. With that said, he waved goodbye at the two women as he headed toward the exit. I'll see you tomorrow, Tenten. Bye. Kyohaku Kasen. Both women waved and said their goodbyes in return, before the blonde boy left the store. Sighing, Tenten shook her head in amusement. I think Naruto will soon learn that learning Kenjutsu is no easy task. Not to mention that it takes control to properly channel the right amount of chakra into a medium to form a particular jutsu on top of finding the right stance to launch the jutsu. Sighing again, Tenten chuckled. He'll have his work cut out for him. Indeed, Kyohaku concurred prior to proudly grinning at her daughter. Yet, if anyone has the patience to teach Naruto-kun Kenjutsu, it'll be you. Tenten grinned at that. Thanks, Mom. She then left to journey into the back room and upstairs to fetch something to drink. Left behind to look after the store, Kyohaku smirked, knowing well that things were going to be quite interesting from tomorrow onward in the village. I'll see you tonight, Mom. Tenten called out to her mother before dashing out of their store's front entrance, heading toward the Memorial Stone training field. Since she was in great shape, the young Kunoichi jogged toward her destination without using any chakra. She took pride in this, since it meant her endurance would last longer in a battle compared to 2 years ago. It was not the only thing the brunette was proud about herself. Ever since she had started training Naruto 3 weeks ago in Kenjutsu, she became more confident in herself as a teacher. Her blonde friend was attentive when she was able to describe the stances of a style in ways that he could understand. Get too technical and her student would be lost. It made her wonder if she has what it took to be a Junin sensei. Speaking of her student, Tenten had to admit that she was tad jealous of the boy. Like every Konoha ninja at the time, she had heard of Naruto's Kage Bunshin training technique, when he had undergone his elemental chakra training under Kakashi and Yamato. It was absolutely amazing that one could able to accelerate one's training and knowledge by using Kage Bunshin. To finally see Naruto using that technique during their training exercises was remarkable. Tenten smirked as she left the village and headed toward the training fields. Just too bad Kage Bunshin can't transfer physical conditioning to the original owner. They may be great to learn the stances, but they do not give nothing when it comes to physically getting used to wielding the swords. Konoha's weapons mistress giggled upon remembering Naruto's reaction. He was disappointed upon hearing that, but he certainly didn't complain upon knowing he would be spending more time with me. Her giggling expression became a warm one upon recalling that. Naruto has become a great friend ever since she had met him a decade ago, when he had first came to her family's store. It was sad that she was so used to training with her then friends at the time, she didn't even thought of maybe inviting Naruto to train with her. After one time seeing Naruto trained with Lee, Tenten had been convinced the hyperactive shinobi was a hard worker, and the past several weeks, she had been enjoying her training sessions with Naruto so much, that she has been looking forward to them. Upon arriving at the training field, the bun-haired brunette quickly spotted the object of her thoughts, as he practiced the Kenjutsu stances by himself not far from the memorial stone. With a fond smile, Tenten has to admit that her friend has gotten some of the stances of the style down packed, but he still has some ways to go. He certainly has come a long way from the loudmouth little kid he was when he was a genin. Not to mention he grew to be quite handsome, she mentally added, before the young woman immediately blinked. What am I saying? Tenten thought before frowning. I certainly do not mind admiring a strong bod on a guy, but this is Naruto here. A sigh escaped her mouth just before her lips formed a tiny self-chastened grin. Tenten girl, you have to just admit that he certainly is eye candy now. Eyeing the so-called eye candy, Tenten knew that Naruto's wardrobe also has improved over time. That orange-blue jacket and orange pants he wore, as a genin, were the worst color combo a shinobi would wear. His shinobi attire improved somewhat after his training trip with Jiraiya, but still, he wore too much orange. The addition of the red Haori after his Toad Sage training was okay, even if it did clashed with the orange. Today, as a Chunin, he wore black pants and black shirt with orange stripes going down the length of the arms and pants. His Chunin vest was over the shirt, and the red Haori topped the outfit. His present ninja wear certainly was a vast improvement than 6 years ago. Of course, the kunoichi of Team Guy knew he has grown physically as well. Despite he was a year younger than her, he was a head taller than her now compared to when he was 15 years old, and this was only if she wasn't wearing high heels, for if she was wearing high heels, he would be half a head taller than her. His baby fat was gone, leaving smooth hard lines on his angular face, which was surrounded by his golden hair that was more shaggy and wild. Top all that with an athletic, lean, muscled body, and one ended up with a handsome man any woman would drool over. Mentally shaking herself out of the reverie, Tenten approached her friend, who opted just to wear a simple torso-hugging black t-shirt over the usual black pants, while his Haori lay next to the memorial stone. Morning, Naruto. Morning, Tenten. Naruto smiled as he returned the greeting. Ready to start another training day? I certainly am looking forward to it. Tenten snorted a laugh. You just can't wait to see whether you can win one over me. Her face became smug as she gazed up into his eyes. In your dreams, mister. As I said, you will not ever win a straight Kenjutsu fight with someone like me without resorting to ninjutsu. We'll see about that, weapons girl. he teased back. Uzumaki Naruto will not ever give up. Datbeo. Laughing, Tenten sure highly approved of those who were not quitters, and Naruto certainly was not a quitter. We'll see about that, she replied prior to detaching her weapon scroll from her back and unrolling it to unseal a pair of kodachis into her hands. Let me warm up, and then we'll spar to see where you need improvement. The blonde nodded his understanding. So after her warm-up minutes later, the pair began sparring, thus beginning Naruto's training. By sparring, Tenten could see where he done wrong, and by telling him where he needed to correct his movements by adjusting his arms and legs, the young female ninja helped improve her friend's skills. It was a morning routine they eventually fell into only after the first 2 training days. Lunch was a time for relaxation prior to the afternoon workout. Both had agreed to bring their lunches after their second training day since it was a waste of time to go back to the village for lunch and then immediately run back. By bringing their lunches, they could relax in each other's company, debriefed about the morning lessons, and prepared for the afternoon. Afternoon sessions mostly have Naruto used his Kage Bunshin to Kenjutsu spar one another to utilize what he has learned in the morning. Most Bunshins would do this, while the original and a single Bunshin would use the original Chakra Kodachis to practice molding wind chakra into the blades and try to create wind jutsus. In the meantime, Tenten would be fighting off a horde of Naruto Kage Bunshins to help keep her overall fighting skills razor sharp, for she had found Naruto's Kage Bunshins made ideal practice partners to aim her weapons at. After all, she did not need to worry about hurting the real Naruto or anyone, thus she could go all out on the Bunshins as much as she pleased. Blades of wind slashed through a mid-sized tree, pieces of it falling down around the stump of the trunk. Naruto grinned in satisfaction that he has made some progress with employing his wind chakra through the Kodachi. He did not know whether he would able to pull off a wind jutsu that could be just as destructive as his Fuden, Rasen Shuriken while in Sage mode, but if he could, least he would not have to go into Sage mode to use such powerful techniques. Taking a break, Naruto looked across the field to where Tenten was still battling his Kage Bunshins. They certainly were giving her a run for her money, since they weren't just rushing her like a bunch of buffoons. They were organizing themselves into collective groups to work together to try to overwhelm her strategic wise. Of course, it did help her that the clones weren't using ninjutsu or else she really would have been overwhelmed. A fond grin spread on Naruto's face, as he admired his female friend's abilities. Tenten was the first girl near his age that truly took it seriously when it came to being a kunoichi, thus why she took her training seriously as well. It had taken Sakura and Ino some time before each had started taking things seriously. Hinata was okay, but she, at first, just didn't have the determination until she was motivated. Tenten had the drive and determination from the start, and such a strong work ethic was something Naruto admired heavily in a person. As Tenten landed to avoid being caged again by the Naruto clones, her back facing the original Naruto, the blonde was treated to a good view of the girl's shapely butt. A tint of pink formed on his cheeks before Naruto looked away with a small, somewhat leering chuckle. Over the years, Naruto has developed a healthy respect for the opposite gender. Oh, he was not ever a pervert, as his late Sanin sensei was, so he would not ever peek into the women's baths or into people's windows. Yet, being a hormone male, like any other man, he certainly enjoyed looking at the feminine forms of women, especially the kunoichi. It just so happened that he had been so focused on Sakura that he only just in recent months started noticing others, and Tenten, for sure, has one well-toned, shapely body. Naruto mentally slapped himself out of such thoughts. Of course, Tenten would have evolved into a striking young woman from the girl he had met years ago. Her kunoichi outfit also had changed over time along with her physical development. As a genin, she had looked sort of cute in her pink, Chinese, short-sleeved shirt, dark pants, and simple shinobi shoes. At the time, she had carried her weapons in 2 small scrolls. After he had come home from his training trip, Tenten had been promoted to Chunin with a whole new outfit. She worn white, full-sleeved, Chinese blouse, red pants, and heeled kunoichi sandals. Her two small storage scrolls had been replaced with the single large one, which she still used today. Occasionally, she would still use the two small scrolls, but she primarily used the large one. Today, her current attire was quite eye-catching. Black, hugging pants outlined her toned, feminine legs, while a short-sleeved, short-skirted, white, red trim, Chinese, form-fitting dress covered her curvy upper body with a black, waist belt. Her feet were adored with kunoichi high-heeled sandals. Finishing the assembly, silver metal bracelets were on her forearms with black, fingerless gloves. Despite the physical aspects of the attire, the real eye-catcher was the embroiled golden Chinese dragon on front of the dress. In such an outfit, it was hard for the Kyuubi Jinchuriki to not notice how physically attractive the weapon's mistress has become. Feeling a large number of people surrounding him from the sides and back, Naruto blinked upon realizing all his clones, except those fighting Tenten, were besides him and looking at the good-looking female ninja. It didn't take long before the comments started flying from the 21 buncheons. Wow, Tenten certainly has one hot bod, one clone began. Look at that butt. Another leered. Check out her chest. She must be equal to Temari's size. With one eye ticking, Naruto quickly raised his left hand into a typical two-finger form and dispelled the clones around him with a mental Kai command. He absorbed the clones' knowledge with ease, before he picked up the fallen second Kodachi and dropped down to sit cross-legged on the ground to meditate. Why do my clones have to be such wise guys and perverts? He mentally groused, trying not to overthink on the fact that his kunoichi friend was quite sexy. The young man swore the spirit of Ero Sennin was now laughing at him. Naruto. Tenten's voice roused the blonde, realizing some time has passed since he started meditating. He looked up at Tenten's grinning face as she stood before him. It's almost 5 now. Time to go. Returning her grin with his own, the blonde man stood up before sheathing his kodachis. Need help getting your weapons? Tenten shook her head. No. Your remaining clones helped recover them, she replied while thumbing over her shoulder to the few buncheons, who waved cheekily at the original before dispelling. After shaking his head amusedly at his clone's antics, Naruto focused again on his kenjutsu teacher. Tenten. Seeing he has her attention, he continued. I know we're going to be having a small party at 7 at your place to celebrate your 19th birthday today, just I like to take you out to dinner before that. Is this okay with you? Brown eyes went wide in shock. Are you asking me out on a date? She just couldn't believe what she was hearing. Naruto, out of all the guys she knew, was asking her out on a date. Blue eyes blinked in confusion. What? Upon realizing what she was referring, Naruto began nervously chuckling. No, I'm not asking you out on a date, he grinned while rubbing the back of his head. I like to buy you dinner as a birthday present as well as my way in saying thanks for training me in kenjutsu. Oh, Tenten said, chastening herself mentally in believing the blonde man was asking her out on date. Knowing what he really meant, she aimed a small, thankful grin at her friend. You don't have to buy me dinner, Naruto. I said before I am happy to help you out as a friend, and I meant it. You don't need to feel obligated to me. Naruto happily shrugged. It's nothing really. I'm more than willing to buy you dinner. Seeing that she looked like she was giving in to the idea, he pressed forward. So, where do you want to eat? As I said, I'm paying for it. Lips in a wry smirk, Tenten thought about it and truly couldn't see anything wrong with the proposal. Even if it was not a date, it would be nice to spend more time with Naruto prior to meeting the rest of their friends at her home. His company and his willingness to pay for the meal was a deal she couldn't pass up. Fine, I'll accept the dinner, Naruto, the birthday girl commented, earning her a broad grin from the whisker-faced man before her. Meet me at Ichiraku's in 1 hour. Ichiraku's? Naruto blinked. I know that is not your favorite restaurant, Tenten. You do not have to feel the need to go there just for me. I know, Tenten replied, It's just I haven't been there in a long time, and I haven't had ramen since that last time I've been there. Also, I want to see how they are doing. Not wanting to be a fool to pass up this opportunity to eat at his favorite restaurant, Naruto shrugged with a friendly grin. If you're okay with it, Ichiraku's it is then. Good. She grinned in satisfaction. Now go home to clean yourself up and change. Her expression became a mock serious one, her eyes twinkling in teasing amusement. I am not going to go out to dinner all sweaty and smelly, and neither should you. Got it? Yes, ma'am, Naruto cheekily saluted with a wink, earning him a giggle from his kunoichi friend. After walking over to pick up his Haori, Naruto used the Shunshin no Jutsu to teleport to his apartment, and a moment later, Tenten, her large weapon scroll in hands, did the same to get to her home. When it came to making the most out of time given, all shinobi in the village certainly agreed that the Shunshin was quite a time saver. The uncooked and cooked food could be smelled through the air. The sounds of talking and other noises could be heard all around. The movement of people could be seen as they walked about their businesses up and down the streets and weaving in and out of stores and other businesses. This was the way things were in the busy shopping and business sections of Konoha, for like any other village, people needed to shop and conduct business almost every day. It was a way of life that had existed since the dawn of civilization. For one particular restaurant, it was business as usual, as its owner, his daughter, and one or two employees continued to prepare meals ordered by their customers. Ever since he has founded his business when he was young, the owner was known for making the most delicious ramen in all of Konoha. He and his restaurant even managed to be listed as the #1 place in all of Fire Country for the best ramen around. This was the way of life for Ichiraku Tsuki, his daughter Ayame, and the Ichiraku ramen stand. Yet things have changed a lot for the ramen stand, ever since the Akatsuki member Pain has attacked Konoha 2 to 3 years ago. Like most of the village, the tiny stand had been destroyed, and Tsuki had to rebuild from scratch with whatever little remains salvaged from the wreckage of business and home. However, a great benefactor came in the form of their best customer, Uzumaki Naruto. When Konoha's greatest hero has heard of his favorite restaurant's destruction, he found a way to generate the much-needed money for Tsuki to rebuild. Sometime after Akatsuki's final defeat, the young shinobi went to the nearest gambling town from Konoha and in one day, won a great deal of money, which he contributed all to the rebuilding of Ichiraku's. Both Tsuki and Ayame had been flabbergasted to the amount they had been given, for it was more than enough to rebuild their restaurant bigger and better than it was before. They felt they would be forever in Naruto's debt, but the young man told them he was the one who would forever be in their debt for their friendship. So, Ichiraku ramen stand had been rebuilt at a new location at the bottom of a small hill, which connected two business streets via a staircase. It was rectangle in shape, enabling to seat 11 people around the left, front, and right sides under overhangs for weather protection, and the interior was roomier to allow more equipment and breathing room for employees. Paper lanterns were situated underneath the overhangs and all around the place for great illumination at night. Last, but not least, a 2-story residential home was built behind the restaurant for Tsuki and his daughter. Overall, the new Ichiraku ramen stand was indeed bigger and better than it was before. Yet there were several changes that made the small restaurant stood out. In honor of their favorite customer's great gift, the Ichirakus had adorned their stand with Naruto's favorite color, orange, and his family crest, the Uzumaki spiral. It was hard not to see the orange almost everywhere, from the countertops to the paper lanterns. Even the overhang drapes were orange with black flames on the bottom rim. The Uzumaki spiral was on the sides of the countertops, the top of the menu chalkboard, and other places. Naruto had been dumbfounded and deeply touched on what the Ichirakus had done. From that point forward, his loyalty to the Ichirakus was stronger and unbreakable than ever before. As he had mentioned, it was he who would forever be in their debt for their friendship. As the sun began to set over the horizon and the lights of the village flickered on to light the increasing darkness, a blonde male Chunin teleported into the tiny clearing between Ichiraku's and the hill, and then with a grin, he walked toward the left side of the ramen stand. There, Tyuki's daughter, who he considered a big sister ever since he was little, greeted him warmly. Hello there, Naruto-kun. Ayame chimed, taking in his off-duty attire of black slacks and black t-shirt with an orange Uzumaki spiral on the front. Hi there, Ayame Nichan. Naruto greeted in return, before he settled in the center of the 3 stools situated on the left side of the stand. So what will it be? The older girl asked. Her father, who was standing behind the cooking equipment, also waited to hear what his favorite customer would order, so he could start on it right away. Naruto shook his head. Not yet. I'm waiting for Tenten to arrive. I promised her dinner to celebrate her birthday and as way of thanks for her helping me with my training. He placed the tiny box in his hand behind a napkin dispenser to hide it from view. This news from Naruto raised the eyebrows on both Ikirika's faces. Their young friend had told them that he was undergoing training in Kenjutsu by his female friend Tenten, not to mention it was also one of the subjects going around on the Konoha rumor mill. Now, here was Naruto offering dinner to his female friend. They wonder how long it would be until the speculations started running wildly. After a few minutes of waiting, a feminine voice called out to the blonde shinobi. Naruto. Konoha's Jinchuriki swiveled on his stool to watch Konoha's weapons mistress approached from the hillside staircase. Hi there, Tenten, he welcomed, taking in her attire of black slacks, black sleeveless Chinese blouse with gold trim, and feminine high-heel sandals meant for off-duty use. The pink lip gloss and touch of blue eyeshadow made her face quite pretty. You're looking good tonight, weapons girl. Tenten blushed at the compliment. Thanks, Naruto, she smiled, and then she sat on the stool to his right. To the bun-haired girl, the attire and makeup was mostly for the party after dinner, but the pleased look on Naruto's face and his praise made Tenten felt like she had done it for him. She couldn't help but feel a giddy pleasure in thinking this. A friendly grinning Ayame stepped up to the pair. Well, now that the birthday girl is here, Tenten felt her cheeks blushed a bit more. Can Dad and I get your orders? After Naruto gentlemanly gestured for her go first, Tenten placed her order. 1 bowl of miso please along with some sake. The blonde ticked off his fingers as he placed his order. I'll have 1 miso, 1 chicken, and 1 beef. Oh, some sake for me as well. Coming right up, Tyuki called out. He began preparing his 2 customers' order, while Ayame quickly brought out a bottle of sake and 2 sake saucers. Picking up the sake bottle, Naruto politely poured some for Tenten and then for himself, and after placing down the bottle, he held up his saucer toward his friend, who held up hers. A toast to you, Tenten. Happy birthday. Thank you, Tenten grinned, before they gently clinked their saucers together before drinking down the liquid. So, the brunette began while refilling her saucer, do you think you'll eventually able to master the Kenjutsu style I'm teaching you and create some wind-style jutsus? You're doing well so far. Thanks. Her blonde companion beamed. I'll master that style and create awesome wind jutsus that will blow the competition away that Bachan will have to promote me to Junin. Datbayo. Tenten chuckled at his enthusiasm. Are you saying you'll apply to take the Junin exam this year? She joked. Blinking, Naruto thought about it, before a serious grin spread across his face. Yeah, I want to see whether I can get that promotion to Junin. Are you serious? Tenten asked, not believing what she was hearing. Seeing the look in those blue eyes, she sighed with a tiny grin. You are serious. I was just joking, Naruto. Naruto chuckled. Yeah, I know. Just maybe I should go for that promotion. After all, many of our superiors said that I have the skill and power level of an elite Junin or Kage. Just because you have the power level of a Kage or Junin, doesn't mean you are Kage or Junin material, Tenten softly chided. Remember Neji. During that first Chunin exam, he shown he has the power and skill level of a Chunin, but he was passed for promotion. Why? He just didn't have the maturity of a leader at the time. Her lips curled into a smirk. It took you beating him up to get that stick out of his in order for him to understand his personality faults. Naruto chuckled at the memories of that day. Their conversation was interrupted when Ayame appeared with their ramen. After thanking her, the pair each picked up a pair of chopsticks from the chopsticks holder, snapped the individual sticks apart, and called out, "Itadakimasu," before digging into their meals. As they ate for a few minutes in comfortable silence, Tenten noticed that Naruto least was not eating his ramen like he was starving. She remembered how much a pig he was when he was younger, especially when it came to Ichiraku ramen. Least he has matured somewhat when it came to his eating habits. Of course, she chuckled to herself, that this didn't mean he hasn't stopped eating more than one bowl per mealtime. After slurping up some noodles, the young kunoichi decided to restart their discussion. As I was saying before, Naruto, you need to show more than skills and power in order to prove yourself worthy of a promotion. Are you really up to the challenge? You bet. Naruto answered with a wink, which made his friend chuckled as she shook her head. After slurping up some more noodles, he spoke what was on top of his mind. What about you? Do you want to get promoted to Junin? The question made Tenten paused in her meal, her mind pondering over the subject. Only after a minute of thinking, did she give her friend an answer. It's something to aim for, I admit. I would love to become one of the best kunoichi in the village, following Suan-sama's footsteps. The best of the best. Why don't you? Naruto casually stated before slurping up more noodles. What? Tenten went wide-eyed at his suggestion. Did he say what she heard he said? Blue eyes locked on uncertain brown ones. Take the promotion exam, Tenten. It doesn't hurt to try. You're strong and smart, so I know you can make it, if you give it your best shot. The combination of his words and his warm smile of encouragement slowly raised her confidence, making the Chunin kunoichi slowly produced a determined grin. What did she have to lose for trying? You're right. I will give it my best shot. That's the spirit. Naruto smiled broadly. He then raised his bowl to drink down the broth before placing it down with a satisfying sigh. As her golden-haired companion started to dig into his second ramen bowl left by Ayame during their conversation, Tenten resumed her meal while thinking on the goal of getting that promotion. It was not going to be easy, given the tests for Junin promotions were a lot tougher than the Chunin exams. A frown marred her face, thinking she has her work cut out for her. Seeing her frown, Naruto paused his eating. What's wrong? He asked at the same time Tenten drank down her sake. Tenten shrugged, refilling her saucer. Naruto, to be honest, it's not going to be easy to get promoted to Junin. I'm thinking of what ways I should prepare myself. The blonde man thought about it for a moment before replying. How about broadening your skills? Other than the basics, do you know any ninjutsu? Tenten shook her head. Well, you can start by focusing on jutsus that matches your element. You mean my elemental chakra? She asked. Naruto nodded, and a moment later, Tenten nodded in return. That's a good start, I admit. Great, exclaimed the pleased Hokage wannabe. I can help you in that. As you helped me broaden my skills by teaching me kenjutsu, I'll help you broaden your skills by teaching you ninjutsu. A thankful smile creased across Tenten's face. Thanks, Naruto. His response was to give his well-known broad fox smile with eyes closed. Just you have to wait until next month to start teaching me. I forgot to tell you earlier that my team and I have a mission tomorrow, and it's highly likely we will be gone for several weeks. No problem, Naruto complied with an accepting grin. Starting next month, we'll be helping each other broaden our skills. We'll work together to get that promotion. Deal. He finished with his sake saucer raised toward her. Deal. Tenten grinned warmly back and touched her saucer with his to seal the promise. After sealing the deal and sipping down their drinks, the two friends returned to their meals in good spirits as the last rays of the sun disappeared over the horizon and night came fully to the village. The pair ate and enjoyed each other's company under the starry sky. Many minutes later, after all the food and drink have been consumed, Tenten was giggling along with a snickering Naruto. I didn't know you had one of Guy Sensei's green, spandex suits in your closet. Did he really give it to you? She smiled broadly. Yeah, he did, Naruto confessed before shrugging a bit. I was naive back then, and I'd thought it looked cool. Ero Senin obvious thought it was horrible. I think I kept the suit to get back at him more than how it looked cool. I'm glad though I grew up to know better to wear such an outfit. Ha! Tenten grandly laughed. This coming from a boy who used to wear a ninja outfit with too much orange. Okay. Okay. Naruto chuckled, holding his hands up in surrender. I heard enough of that from everyone. However, he pointed to the grinning girl, I still love the color, no matter what, so don't you go dissing the orange. Tenten giggled some more at his silliness. Glancing at the big wall clock mounted on the rear wall of the stand, so everyone could see it no matter where they sat or stood, Team Guy's female member sighed, realizing the time. We better get going, Naruto, if we need to get back to my home in time for the party. She really had a good time, thus she wished time would have lasted longer for them. Realizing what she meant, Naruto pulled out the tiny box from its hiding spot behind the napkin dispenser and presented it to the stunned birthday girl. Happy birthday, Tenten, he grinned warmly. Oh, Naruto, Tenten smiled slightly as she took the box. Opening the top, feminine fingers ventured inside and pulled out a gold and silver necklace a moment later. Tenten gasped at the elegance of the interwoven gold and silver chain and the tiny gold kunai and silver shuriken hanging off the chain's front. It shined and glimmered like it was made for a high-class woman attending a ball. Naruto, she softly spoke with shocked brown eyes boring into Blue's ones, how much did you pay for this? It's beautiful. With a small grin, the hero of Konoha took the necklace and placed it around his friend's neck to click the ends behind the blouse's neck. The front, where the small kunai and shuriken hung, curved around the blouse's neck to settle over the collarbone. Pulling back to look at her, the blonde spoke out what he thought. It suits you, Tenten. Tenten couldn't form words at the moment as she placed a hand over the necklace, fingers tracing the tiny jewelry weapons. She had received jewelry from her mother and female friends over the years, but none from any of her male friends, not even Neji, who gave her a set of pink kunai for her 18th birthday at the time he was her boyfriend. It was nice to receive weapons and other kunoichi items, given it told Tenten that people were taking her seriously as a ninja. However, it would be nice if any of the guys would also see her as a woman, and for the first time, Naruto was acknowledging her as one with a present meant for a woman, not a kunoichi. His voice brought the dazed young woman back to reality. It didn't cost me an arm or a leg, if that is what you're asking, Tenten, yet it's not dirt cheap either. I did pay extra due that the necklace was a special order I placed a month ago for the jewelry maker. I knew your birthday was coming up, and I'd wanted to give you something special than the usual presents of weapons or other ninja gear. Feeling overwhelmed by her emotions, Tenten just couldn't help but let her feelings guide her as she leaned over to kiss Naruto on the cheek. Thank you, Naruto, she smiled brightly at the young man, who was stunned by her actions. He was so sweet and kind that she felt he rightfully deserved the kiss. Cheeks pinking, Naruto mentally shook himself out of his shock and let a warm grin came to his face as he stared into the radiant expression of his kunoichi friend. You're welcome, Tenten. With her inner being in high spirits, the 19-year-old birthday girl hopped off the stool and gestured to the blonde man to follow her. Come on, pay for the dinner, and we'll walk to my home together. I don't feel like rushing back. Yes, ma'am, Naruto replied cheekily with a wink, which earned him a small, warm laugh from the happy woman before him. After dishing out Gama-chan, his frog wallet, and paying for the dinner, Konoha's Jinchuriki and weapons mistress strolled away from the ramen stand and casually took their time as they walked side to side in each other's warm company. The night was beautiful and brisk with the stars twinkling overhead. As the two young adults walked up the stairs to the street on top of the hill, two pairs of eyes watched them with keen interest from Ichiraku's. Naruto-kun is such a gentleman and sweetheart, Ayame dreamily sighed while cleaning up the counter where Naruto and Tenten had sat. I'm surprised he has yet to have a girlfriend. Tuki slyly smirked while preparing the meals for few other customers. Oh, I don't know about that, Ayame dear. I say it's only a matter of time now before he has one. The brown-haired ramen woman blinked in confusion at her father, until it dawned to her what he meant. She turned back in time to watch Naruto and Tenten reach the top of the stairs and eventually disappeared from view. A warm grin slowly spread across Ayame's face, now thinking along the same lines as her father. Father maybe is right. It's only a matter of time, she mentally said as she went about her business in a good mood, wondering how long it would be until its two young hearts would become one. Taking in the image in the full-length mirror, brown eyes scanned the form from head to toe and scrutinized the appearance. Every bit of clothing on the body was checked and rechecked, before a small satisfying grin graced the owner's face. I certainly look, as Ino would put it, hot, mentally proclaimed Tenten at the outfit she was currently wearing. A sleeveless, strapped, white blouse with lace adoring the top half and satin on the bottom half, while a low neckline displayed her cleavage and a satin bow topped each shoulder strap. Denim shorts showed off her tight behind and shapely legs, and high heel, ankle-strapped sandals encased her feet, the high heels giving more exhibit power to her legs. Overall, the bun-haired woman felt quite sexy in all her femininity, knowing quite well she would be turning many male heads if she walked around Konoha in this outfit. An appreciative whistle sounded behind her, making Tenten turn to gaze at the platinum blonde girl, who was checking her out with light blue eyes. You certainly look hot, she said with a teasing leer of a grin. Tenten smirked back, right hand on her chalked hip. That's what I thought you would have said. Both laughed together in good humor. Afterward, the weapons mistress turned back to the changing room's mirror to once again examine herself in the clothes she had pulled from the store's rack. Currently, she and the rest of her kunoichi friends were in a woman's clothing store trying on outfits during a rare break from missions or any work for them to be all together this way. Over the years, since the first Chunin exam when the Rookie 9 and Team Guy, Sans Sasuke, formed the Konoha 11, Tenten, Sakura, Ino, and Hinata, the girls of the group, would occasionally went out, doing many things girls their age would do, dining, talking, and of course, shopping. Tamari had joined the four soon after she became the Suna ambassador to Konoha, and it wasn't long afterward that the five young kunoichi would be known in the Leaf Village as the Kunoichi Five. Ino, wearing a sleeveless, halter-strapped, one-piece purple dress with high-heel boots, continued to look at her brown-haired friend. Tenten, if I didn't know you better, I say you would make one hell of a hooker. Ignore Blondie there. Tamari's voice came from behind the curtain of a changing cubicle, which was one of 6 in the overall women's changing room, 3 on either side of an aisle. She's just jealous you look better than her. A snicker escaped Tenten's lips as Ino mock huffed at the Suna Kunoichi's joking jab. Ha, you're one to talk, Blondie, she fired back, before her teasing smirk reappeared. Afraid I will steal Shikamaru away from you. As if, Tamari declared. A moment later, a smiling Suna Konoha liaison emerged through the curtains, wearing a strapless, form-hugging, mini-skirted, one-piece, teal dress and high-heel shoes with straps wrapping up to mid-calf. With what I have, I do not need to worry about the competition. She has a point, Tenten snickered again. Ino pretended to pout before sticking out her tongue playfully at the sand blonde, and only then did she drop the mock pout to grin good naturally at Tamari, who done the same back. She had, 2 years ago, thought of going after Shikamaru as a boyfriend, but after the Yamanaka realized her shadow-controlling teammate was spending more time with Suna's wind mistress, she decided to pursue other boys, taking in lessons learned from the rivalry she had with Sakura over Sasuke. It just did not pay to ruin a friendship over the pursuit of a boy. The platinum blonde was grateful she had patched up her friendship with Sakura sometime after Sasuke had left the village 6 years ago. Speaking of Sakura, Ino mentally mused before calling out the pinkett. Hey, forehead, how long is it taking you to change? Don't rush me, Ino pig. The reply came prior to Sakura's emergence from another changing cubicle. Like Tamari, Suon's apprentice wore a tight-fitting, one-piece, mini-skirted dress that shows off her legs and shapely, yet this dress was black and full-sleeved, showing no cleavage. To finish off the outfit, she wore high-heel boots, similar to her kunoichi boots but with higher heels. The beautiful, only daughter of Yamanaka Inoichi mock-pouted once more. "Oh, pooh, you're always so good in finding clothes that suits you." With a witty smirk, Sakura shrugged. "As you always say, Ino, if you got it, you flaunt it." Ino giggled at that. "I know." Tenten shook her head amusedly at the pair. It was hard to believe that these two fought each other in the preliminary rounds during the first Chunin exam years ago. Looking at them now, anyone, who did not know these two, would thought the two young women were always the best of friends. Tamari, however, softly chuckled. "You two know quite well, as Tenten and I, who has a body to flaunt, if she ever does flaunt it, that is." Tamari-kun, a soft female voice gently chided, almost wailing, behind a fifth cubicle. "You know I will not ever wear revealing clothes, no matter what. It's just not me." With that said, Hyuga Hinata, heir of the Hyuga clan, came out of her cubicle wearing a simple, light purple dress with short sleeves and calve-length skirt. The other four women grinned at their timid friend, their expressions showing they were just teasing. Out of the five of them, Hinata has been the most shy when it came to showing any femininity in public, and it came to no surprise she was like that, given her conservative and traditional upbringing as well as her personality. Of course, with a body like a goddess, the blue shade-haired woman has good reasons to not parade herself around Konoha, for she did not want all the wolves of the village to come at her, like they were all in heat. With a hand on her hip, the brunette of the Kunoichi Five grinned reassuringly at her silver-eyed friend. "It's not like you need to dress up revealingly at the dance club tonight, Hinata. Knowing Kiba, he will not mind you not showing off your body, being territorial as an Inuzuka can get." Ino snickered on that. "Yeah, dog boy does not want any other males sniffing out his territory." Tamari, Sakura, and Tenten laughed, while Hinata blushed while giggling a bit at the simple fact regarding her boyfriend. Of course, Kiba was also just as hormonal as any other man, thus there was no doubt he wouldn't have mind seeing his girlfriend in such revealing clothes just for his viewing pleasure. Speaking of boyfriends, Ino began before aiming crafty eyes at the weapons expert of their group. "Are you bringing Naruto to the club tonight?" Tenten rolled her eyes and frowned. "I already told you last month at my birthday party, as well as several times in the last few days. Naruto and I are not dating, and you know already he'll be there with us tonight. He always had attended our large group's social gatherings, unless he can't help it." The wily Ino was not perturbed. "Sure you two are not dating. He took you out to dinner and gave you a beautiful necklace, which you've worn ever since," she finished with a finger pointing to the jewelry around Tenten's neck. Sakura elbowed her blonde friend. "Will you stop that, Ino?" She frowned. Tenten stated she and Naruto are just friends. "Why are you pushing? He's friends with all five of us without being anything more." "Who says I'm pushing?" Ino countered back with a mock-innocent face prior to her expression becoming sly again. "I was just pointing out that Tenten has been spending more time with Naruto than with other people. A few days ago after her team came back, she immediately sought Naruto out, and the two has spent almost every day together since until today." Once again turning back to the mirror as she rolled her brown eyes, Tenten shook her head at Ino's consent badgering. "I'm helping Naruto learn Kenjutsu, so he can better use those chakra kodachis, and only when I came back did he start helping me learn ninjutsu using my nature chakra. I really can't see why you keep persisting there's something more between us. Yet you enjoy spending time with him, do you?" Ino immediately asked. With her eyesight locked on her necklace's mirror image, the bun-haired young woman grinned with a warm expression, her hand coming up to touching the tiny silver and gold kunai and shuriken. "Of course, I do. He's a great friend to be around with. He's strong, determined, loyal, a hard worker, quite funny with a great sense of humor. And he's handsome," Ino added slyly. And he's handsome, Tenten copied before realizing what she just said. With cheeks blushing, the weapon's mistress narrowed her eyes at the mirror image of a smirking, triumphant Ino. Sakura rolled her eyes. He's handsome overall. Why do you suppose he is on the top 10 of the most handsome single shinobi list according to the Konoha Kunoichi magazine? Ino, you're proving nothing so far, regarding anything happening between Naruto and Tenten. The bleached blonde huffed and waved her best friend's points away. Like, why should you care? She inquired before locking her eyes with green ones, her lips forming into a gentle grin. You had a chance with him, and you chose Sasuke. The pink-haired medic sighed with a somewhat sad grin as her eyes cast downward a bit. Yeah, I did, but I couldn't help but fall in love with the new Sasuke that came back home. I would have chosen Naruto eventually, if Sasuke didn't come back. Bright, moist green eyes came up to lock on her friend's blue ones. I'm glad that Naruto was understanding and still kept to being my best male friend. Despite I know he was heartbroken, he still wanted to be my friend. A tear rolled down her cheek just before she turned her head away, closed her eyes, and titled her head down with a wide grin. With a heart that big and forgiving, any woman should be honored to earn his love. An understanding Ino placed a supportive arm around her friend's shoulders, and the next thing they knew, they were hugging each other as Sakura happily cried, making Ino produce a few tears with a grin, knowing her longtime best friend was so right regarding how big a heart Uzumaki Naruto has. Her hands clasped over her heart, Hinata too closed her eyes and grinned with warm thoughts on the blonde shinobi. She cared for Kiba deeply, but part of her would always be Naruto's. Like Sakura, she would always be his friend for the rest of his life. Naruto-kun, she mentally spoke the name fondly, a single tear escaping her eye. Brushing off the tears that threatened to fall, Suna's wind mistress chuckled at the notion that Naruto somehow, without being there, filled her heart. That blonde idiot, she fondly thought. Temari would always be thankful to the Hokage wannabe for changing her baby brother from a psychological killer to the kind and caring man he was today as Suon's Godaime Kazekage. Being Gaara's best friend in the whole world, it was like Naruto has become a member of her family in a sense, and for Temari, she didn't mind Naruto being that way in her heart as her family's greatest friend. Tenten felt her heart clenched upon hearing what Sakura had said. It was extremely rare in this world to meet people who were forgiving with a big heart as Naruto. Most guys would feel somewhat betrayed that the woman he loved would fall for another guy, but since they had not ever been boyfriend, girlfriend per se, it was somewhat easier for Naruto to let Sakura go. It was hard to say whether he would have been forgiving if they had been boyfriend-girlfriend, but knowing the big blonde, Tenten thought he would have forgiven his Kunoichi teammate. Feeling a few tears trailed down her cheeks, the brown-haired Kunoichi grinned warmly as she fingered her necklace with thoughts on the blonde, blue-eyed shinobi with whisker birthmarks on his cheeks. I wonder what you're doing right now, Naruto. Ooh, AACHOOO. A loud masculine sneeze reverberated in the forest. Ha, I found you again, Naruto. Cried out another guy, which followed by a few eager barks from a large dog. Let's go, Akamaru. Gatsuga piercing fang. Ah, crap, Naruto said while perching on a tree branch, before he immediately launched into the air to avoid two large spiraling twisters, which destroyed the branch. He landed on the forest floor in time to see his friend Kiba landed a moment later in front of him, while Akamaru, transformed to look like his owner, landed behind the blonde Chunin. I really wish people out there stop talking about me. I'm in the middle of a battle. Hell, no. Kiba grinned widely and evilly, which Akamaru matched. I want them to continue to talk about you. The more they talk about you, the more you sneeze, and the more you sneeze, the more you can't hide from Akamaru and me. Naruto muttered, I really regret now about agreeing to not use Kage Bunshin at the beginning of this fight. Kiba snickered, obviously having heard his friend's mumbling. Well, I was not the one being so why in thinking he can win without his signature jutsu. With a fierce grin, he began running toward his opponent, which Akamaru copied on the other side. Gatsuga. Thinking quickly, Naruto reached behind his back to unsheath his kodachis as the twin Inuzuka twisters approached. Pushing his nature chakra speedily into the blades, the blue-eyed shinobi swiftly waved the twin short swords in a kenjutsu pattern around his body. Fuden. K's Cabe wind element, wind wall. A cylinder of wind, much like a twister, surrounded Naruto up to several feet above his head, deflecting Kiba and Akamaru's attack and flinging the pair away. Landing on their feet and using their hand claws on the ground to break to a stop, Kiba and his canine partner growled at Naruto, who smirked before launching into the air diagonally. The Inuzuka duo immediately followed after him, not wanting to give the blonde a second of rest. Seeing his enemies coming right at him, Naruto waved his chakra-filled kodachis into another pattern. Fuden. Cabe Nami, wind element, wall wave. He cried out before slashing the blades horizontally in front of him, creating a large crescent wall of wind heading straight toward Kiba and Akamaru, and unable to maneuver in midair, the pair was forcefully carried away from Naruto by the wave of wind. Knowing he has only a few seconds until the wind wave dissipated, Naruto landed on the ground with a tree behind him and a tiny clearing in front of him. He thrust his swords into the ground to make them stand upright on their own, before his freed hands began going through hand seals rapidly. Oh, no, you don't. Kiba yelled as the wind technique died down, enabling him and Akamaru to each stick to the trunk of a separate tree. He pulled out several kunai and tossed them at the occupied blonde, before he and his partner launched just behind the kunai. Seeing the incoming weapons, Naruto managed to complete the last hand sai, before he slammed a single hand onto the ground. Doden. Yomi Numa, earth element, swamp of the underworld. The ground and the land around the tiny clearing started turning into a sticky swamp. At the same time the Kyuubi Jinchuriki grabbed his chakra blades and chakra jumped into the air to avoid the kunai, which all hit the ground. In midair, wind nature chakra once more coursed through the kodachis, their owner wielding them to recast a jutsu already made. Fuden. Cabe Nami. He cried out before slashing the blades horizontally to form the shockwave, but this time aimed diagonally downward to catch the Inuzuka duo in mid-flight. The wall of wind forced the pair into the sticky swamp below. Ah, man, Kiba growled, as he and his canine companion tried to break free of the gooey substance while Naruto landed on dry land from the swamp's edge. Akamaru and I could have avoided this, if we were allowed to use Kawarimi or Shunshin. Naruto chuckled. Well, it wouldn't have been fair for you to tell me not to use Kage Bunshin, while I couldn't tell you not to use certain techniques. Fair is fair, mutt. You told me I couldn't use Kage Bunshin, and in exchange, I told you that you can't use Kawarimi, Shunshin, or any technique that enable you to escape other than using your own body to move. Knowing it was useless to struggle, the only son of the Inuzuka clan's head stood still and glared at his friend, who was grinning in triumph. I should have known you'll use new jutsus in our fight, especially knowing you've been training in the past 2 months in using those swords to create wind jutsus. His glare softened with a slight smirk, showing he was impressed. Indeed, a voice from above alerted the 3 combatants to the group of young men standing on the tree branches above them, focusing on the pearl-eyed man with long brown hair. You've improved much in a short amount of time, Naruto. I will not be surprised if you will be creating even stronger Fuden jutsus within a few months. Thanks, Neji. Naruto beamed at his friend, who nodded with a tiny uplift on one corner of his mouth. Taking the rare opportunity of all their teams having the same time off from missions, the young men of teams Kakashi, Asuma, Kurenai, and Guy had decided to spar and train together, while their female teammates were doing whatever they wanted to do on their own. So, Naruto, Kiba, Shino, Neji, Lee, Shikamaru, and Choji came to this dense forest training area to test each other in combat. Only Sai couldn't make it due to an Anbu mission. As Naruto cancelled the Yomi Numa, thus allowing Kiba and Akamaru to break free from the dirt, the rest of their group jumped to the ground. An excited Rock Lee came up to his gold-haired friend. That was a most youthful battle, Naruto-kun. Lee exclaimed. Your hard work and training under Tenten are making you become stronger. With fire in his eyes and a clenched fist, the taijutsu master nearly literally placed his face right up to Naruto's face, which went wide-eyed at the sudden intrusion. You must fight me next. Everyone's sweat dropped as Naruto backed up a couple of steps and nervously chuckled. Fine with me, fuzzy brows. Let me rest a few minutes, before we start our spar, okay? The green spandex shinobi nodded enthusiastically. Sheathing the kodachis back in their scabbards behind his back, Naruto took a quick look at his male friends and was reminded once more that the girls of their group seemed to have changed the most when it came to ninja apparel. Neji, Lee, Shino, and Shikamaru still looked basically the same as 2 years ago with the exception of the goatee the Nara was sporting. Choji was wearing a much sturdier armor with a different color scheme. Kiba has changed the most, for he now wore his Chunin vest over a short-sleeved brown jacket with fur trims on the sleeves, fishnet undershirt, brown camouflage pants, and brown shinobi shoes. With his brown hair much wilder, he certainly has the looks of a fierce warrior you did not want to mess with. Of course, Naruto couldn't forget that he too has changed his outfit with the exception of the red haori. Naruto, Neji's voice brought the young toad sage out of his thoughts. Tenten had told Guy-sensei, Lee, and I that you were going to teach her jutsus using her elemental chakra. I presume you've started her training the day after we came back, correct? Naruto grinned with a single nod. Yeah, nothing major yet, Neji. Just the basics for now. She does have great chakra control, and even though her control is not on the level as Sakura-chan's, it'll help her master jutsus as she progresses. Neji nodded in understanding at this. Thinking back to a few days ago, the blonde shinobi mentally grinned that his weapons-loving friend sure would become a kunoichi not to tangle, if she ever mastered her nature chakra. Using the simple test of pushing chakra into a single slip of chakra paper, they'd found that Tenten's chakra element was fire, the most common among most of the Konoha ninja population. With a few beginner's scrolls in Kaden jutsus, the weapons mistress had begun her elemental training. Are you ready, Naruto-kun? Lee grinned, eager to spar with his friend rival. Unlike Kiba-kun, I will not pose any restrictions on you. Fight me with everything you have. With an equal eager grin, Naruto nodded once before venturing out into the clearing with Lee following. The taijutsu expert quickly stood into his usual starting stance with one hand behind his back and the other extended in the front upward with palm facing inward, and once the Hokage wannabe took a stance, both young men waited until one or the other would begin. A few seconds before he began to charge at his new opponent, Naruto had one last thought regarding the brown-eyed kunoichi with brown hair put up into 2 buns. Given your personality, I think I shouldn't have been surprised your nature chakra was fire, he mentally and fondly grinned. It suits you, Tenten. With that warm thought, Uzumaki Naruto went into battle mode as he began the spar against Rock Lee. Ooh, the music was playing loudly. The strobe lights and disco ball were flashing on and off around the place, especially over the dance floor. The sounds of dancing feet, conversations, and partying could be heard everywhere. These were what the human senses were conveying at one particular dance club in Konoha. It was filled with people, who came out at night to party, socialize with friends, and have a great time. With a couple of bars off each side and a large dance floor in the center surrounded by tables and side and corner booths, it was one of the most popular clubs in the village. Walking into the club, wearing dark pants and black button-up shirt with an orange leaf symbol on the left, one Uzumaki Naruto scanned the semi-dark club before wandering off in search of his friends. Spotting a large rectangle table with 8 familiar people sitting around it, he smiled and headed for it, and once he was in visual range, he greeted his friends, who in turn had spotted him as well. Hi, guys. Naruto waved to everyone there. Well, it's about time you show up. Kiba joked. I was wondering if you were kidnapped by the Hokage to do her paperwork. Nah, the grinning blonde man responded back with a dismissal wave, Ba-chan would have just destroyed the paperwork than bother kidnapping me to do it for her anyway. Kiba and the others laughed, as Naruto settled into an empty seat to the left of Tenten, who smirked and shook her head at him for making fun of her idol. You know, Tenten began while pointing to her whisker-faced friend, even after all these years, I still can't understand why you continue to call her, Ba-chan. Will it hurt to even call her, Hokage-sama, once? Naruto chuckled. If I did that, then she would think something is wrong with me and put me under observation. Now, why would I do that? He finished with a teasing voice, his eyes locked with brown ones as a few chuckles was heard around the table. Tenten playfully stuck out her tongue at him. Chuckling at the mischievous kunoichi, Naruto's eyes quickly scanned the table and everyone's position relative to his own, sitting at one corner with his back to the dance floor. Going clockwise, Kiba was to his left, sitting at the head of the table, followed by Hinata, Ino, Choji, Lee, Shikamaru, who sat at the other end, Temari, and finally Tenten. After giggling at the playfulness Tenten displayed at her fellow blonde, Temari spoke up to him. Tenten told us girls today that you're aiming for the Junin promotion. Is this true, Naruto? Yep. Naruto confirmed with a grin. That's why both Tenten and I are helping each other train, so we can prepare to take the Junin promotion test. Both of you. Kiba raised his eyebrows, and after the pair nodded in affirmative, the Inuzuka narrowed his eyes at his whiskered friend. Why didn't you say anything about this before? Shikamaru rolled his eyes. Maybe because no one bothered to ask him. He too felt a bit put off that Naruto didn't say anything, but then again, the Nara knew it was none of his business, whether or not any of his friends aim for advancement to the Junin rank. Whether a person wants the promotion or not, it's none of anyone's business. Ino snorted a laugh. This coming from a man who was somewhat motivated by his girlfriend to seek out the promotion. Wearing the mini-skirted dress she had bought from the clothes store earlier in the day, Temari smirked at the lazy genius, who sighed with a lazy grin at his Suna love before picking up his drink glass. Troublesome woman, he muttered before his lips took in a sip. Her giggle told him she was amused. Kiba took a sip of his drink before thumbing himself. Well, I'm not going to wait any longer. If Naruto is going to take the test, so will I. I'm not going to sit back and watch you, he pointed to his blonde friend, get ahead of me. Now, Kiba-kun, Hinata softly chided with a small grin, her hands adjusting the skirt of her halter top, light blue dress. Not everyone has what it takes to become a Junin. I'm perfectly happy staying as a Chunin. As heir of my clan, I simply do not have the time or luxury for the duties the Junin rank entitles. Speak for yourself, Ino mumbled. I wouldn't mind getting that promotion. The Yamanaka took a gulp of her drink. Damn, forehead, she had gotten ahead of me. She trained blue eyes to her brown-haired teammate besides her. Least Choji and I are stuck together in that department, she smiled sweetly at the Akamichi, who grinned with blushing cheeks at his beautiful friend. After downing another sip, Kiba aimed a finger at the long-haired platinum blonde. Well, Shino had gotten ahead of me, and I'm not going to let Naruto do so. Tenten rolled her eyes at the dog handler's complaints. I certainly am not complaining that my teammates have jumped ahead of me in rank. Her lips turned from a frown to a confident grin. I'm going to do something about it, she said prior to locking eyes with the dark ones of her green-loving teammate. Tenten is right, Lee exclaimed, grinning at her before looking around the table. Either you do or you don't. Be happy with what you have, and if you're not, change it for the better. Naruto-kun has always said that we decide our fate, and he is right. A smirk came across Kiba's face. I can drink to that, he proclaimed, raising his drink glass. With the exception of Naruto, everyone else followed suit and here cheered to the notion before taking a drink. As she sipped down her drink, Tenten eyed her raven-haired teammate and friend and thoughtfully thanked Kami that Lee was not drinking any alcohol. At Naruto's suggestion 2 years ago, Lee had been told about his drunken fist abilities and the severe effects produced when he even drinks a tiny amount of alcohol. Chagrined that he was capable of harming his people, Guy's favorite student had vowed not to drink a sip of alcohol, unless he has no choice in a life and death battle. From that day onward, Lee was true to his word. Chuckling that he has no drink to toast along with his friends, Konoha's Jinchuriki stood up after everyone else took a sip of their drinks. I'm going to get a drink. With that said, he walked past Kiba to head toward the bar. After looking down into her empty glass with a frown, Tenten stood up and followed her training partner. I need a refill, she explained as she passed Kiba, right on Naruto's heels. Light blue eyes twinkling, Ino giggled slyly, turning her torso around to watch Naruto and Tenten approach the semi-crowded bar. Oh, I can't wait to see how those two interact, she cooed, causing everyone else to eye the pair. I still think there's something going on between them, no matter what Tenten says. Shikamaru sighed and shook his head. Ino, you're such a romantic gossiper. He lifted his glass to his lips to take a sip, choosing to not stare at his two friends like a leering fool. Arriving at the bar, the blue-eyed young man placed an order with the bartender. 1 bottle of sake with a glass, please. As soon as he said that, he felt a presence next to him to his left, thus Naruto was a bit surprised to find Tenten there, when she wasn't there a moment ago. Can you refill my glass, please? The bun-haired woman asked the bartender. Soda and gin. As the bartender immediately attended to their orders, Naruto turned fully about to face his kunoichi friend. You're looking good tonight, weapons girl, he grinned, his eyes praising her form from head to toes, new outfit. Tenten felt her cheeks flushed. Partially, she replied with a tiny smirk, not minding his examination. She wore the white, lace satin blouse she had bought today at the clothes store with a black mini skirt she already had in her wardrobe. Sexy high heel shoes encased her feet, and the necklace he had given her was around her neck. To finish the feminine touch, her makeup was consisted of red lipstick and light brown eyeshadow. Overall, she knew she looked good, but it was a boost to her self-esteem that Naruto thought she looked quite appealing to him. His appraisal made her feel womanly and sexy, and that was saying a lot to her what she thought about the handsome blonde shinobi. Deciding to return the favor, Tenten eyed her friend in the same manner as he did with her. You're not looking bad yourself, Whisker Boy, she mentioned coyly just as the bartender left their orders in front of them on the bar. Naruto raised an amused eyebrow at the nickname she had started calling him in recent days after her team came home from their mission. He didn't mind it at all. I aim to please. I take you like what you see. Yep, she replied with a teasing grin. You better watch it, or else, you might draw all the women in the club to you. Not likely, a chuckling Naruto dismissed such a notion. The only women I'm going to pay attention tonight are Ino, Hinata, Tamari, and you. With that said, he reached over to fill his glass from the sake bottle. Hearing the emphasis, Tenten pleasantly smiled at her training partner. He seemed to know precisely what a woman wanted to hear. In that case, you better prepare yourself for a night of dancing, Naruto. I'm looking forward to have some fun. And have fun, you will receive, Naruto grandly smiled at her, enjoying seeing that smile on her face. Picking up his glass, he toasted to her. To fun. Tenten took her glass and mimicked his action. To fun, she agreed, and with a clink of their glasses, the pair sipped their drinks, each not minding at all what lay ahead. Over at the table, Ino was giggling at what she saw. I couldn't hear a word that was spoken, but from their facial expressions, I say those two are flirting. She giggled some more, narrowed eyes twinkling. Oh, the rest of the night is going to be fun. And fun, they all enjoyed. As the evening progressed, the group of 9 friends drank, talked, and danced the night away. Each of the guys danced with each of the gals a few times, but the 4 women mostly stayed with their boyfriends or particular men as time went by. So it came to no surprise a few hours later, when during a fast dance number, a tipsy Tamari was dancing quite suggestively against Shikamaru, who knew what the Suna Wind mistress would want from him later on in a more private setting. Kiba, who was also tipsy, danced close to Hinata without making contact much. At the table, a slightly bombed Ino was clinging to an amused and flabbergasted Choji, who wondered if his pretty teammate was really coming on to him. Lee had managed to make a couple of new female friends he met at the bar, thus he was currently dancing together with them. Last, Tenten, being a tad tipsy, was dancing close to Naruto, their hands on each other's bodies as they moved to the fast beat of the music. Laughing and enjoying herself tremendously with her hands around his neck, the weapons mistress has to admit that her dance partner sure knows how to sway to the music. Oh, they had danced together during social functions in the past, but this time was different, for Tenten wanted very much that he to be her main dance partner for tonight. With his hands holding his kunoichi friend by the waist, Naruto too was enjoying himself highly, loving hearing her laughter and seeing her grinning up at him as they moved together as one to the fast-paced music. For some strange reason, the blonde wanted to stay by her side tonight. Maybe it was due to their bond as training partners, or their goal to get that Junin promotion together. Regardless of his reasons, he wanted to be there for Tenten, and tonight, he wanted her to have fun, which they were both taking pleasure in spades. Feeling impish to tease him, Tenten twisted around in his hands, and before Naruto knew it, she was grinding her back and behind into his front, her hands over his as she guided their movements. He was taken aback at first at the sudden change, but as his cerulean eyes locked onto her teasing chocolate ones after she turned her head to look at him, the young man deviously grinned and began grinding back, making her grin wider. "You're being a tease, weapons girl," Naruto jokingly chided softly for only her to hear. A snicker escaped Tenten's mouth. "Look who's talking, Whisker boy," she responded in the same tone. "You're having fun, aren't you? I have to say the same with you," he immediately fired back, making her laugh as they twisted and grinded together. Over at the table, Ino whistled at the display Tenten and Naruto were presenting. "Look at those two go," she exclaimed before her lips carved upward on one side. "Not boyfriend and girlfriend, my they're teasing and flirting with each other. I say it's only a matter of time." Choji shrugged, chopping down on pretzels happily. "They're having fun, that's for sure." Mischievously eyeing her teammate, the long-haired blonde leaned over to whisper right into his ear. "How about you and I go out there to have some fun ourselves?" She purred. The big, broad Akamichi nearly had a heart attack right there, his mind being fried with images of being that close and personal to a beautiful girl, who was only wearing black, spandex shorts and an eye-popping, tight, crop top, short-sleeved, purple blouse which displayed her cleavage. He did his best to not get a bleeding nose. Ino was inwardly giggling at Choji's reaction. "He's so cute all flustered like that. Maybe I should keep him." A few minutes later, the fast-paced song and music reached its end, prompting everyone on the dance floor to clap as most caught their breath. A moment later, soft slow-paced music started to play. A few couples left the dance floor at the same time others joined onto the floor, while those on the dance floor began to slow dance with the strobe lights adjusting to create a romantic atmosphere. As a soft grinning Ino, who wanted to dance, led Choji onto the dance floor, Naruto and Tenten closely and slowly swayed back and forth in front of each, their eyes locked together with her hands on his shoulders and his on her waist. Both felt warm and secure in each other's company, letting the soft music guide them around. "Cammy, he definitely is handsome," Tenten thought, letting herself be lost into those sea blues of his. "He's so kind and considerate of others, not to mention so strong in being a shinobi. There's no doubt he'll make a wonderful Hokage." "She's beautiful," Naruto said to himself, his sight delving deep into those chocolate orbs of hers. "She's smart, kind, and definitely one strong kunoichi. I have a good hunch she'll go far." Wanting to dance closer, the lovely brunette placed her left cheek on his right shoulder, her face close to his neck as her arms encircled his back. His pleasant scent prompted her to close her eyes and just let herself be at peace in the music and his closeness. The blonde warmly grinned at her actions, and in reciprocation, he wrapped his arms around her frame in a gentle hug and situated his right cheek on her forehead, allowing his nose to take in the sweet fragrance of her hair. In all his years, he has not ever felt such harmony within his being as he did now with the gentle melody playing around him and the warm contact of another person. Tenten felt her heart fluttered a bit upon feeling his cheek on her forehead, making her moan so softly in endorsement of his close proximity, and when Naruto heard her moan, which almost sounded like a soft purr, his heart constricted a bit, knowing how much he loved being this near to someone who loved being near you. As their friends softly smiled as they watched the pair danced, Naruto sighed in deep content. I don't want this night to end, he said in a near whisper. Me too, Tenten responded just as contently and softly as he did. She just felt like dancing like this for the rest of the night.